Hey guys, how's it going? I've got some more tips and tricks in this video that should help you win some fights more easily and more quickly. So the first thing is something that I've recently started doing every run right at the start. I mean literally the first thing I do. So when you get on a new character, the first thing you should do is look at the shop and see if there's a good cheap weapon. Anything around 3,500 gold or less is kind of what you're looking for. And if there is, you should look at your money and whether or not you can afford the weapon if you were to sell all your starting gear. Having a good weapon right off the bat is way more useful than any other starting gear because it's going to make the early fights an absolute breeze. Now if there isn't a weapon in the shop, if you have enough fame to re-roll the shop, you should, because sitting on that fame doesn't do you any good anyway. This works best with aspirants, soldiers, and civilians because they typically have a decent amount of starting money and fame, and they also have gear that you can sell. Slaves are really the only one you can't do this on because they start with pretty much nothing. You might be able to do it with criminals depending on what year you get to start, but there's another trick that criminals really benefit from anyway. So this next one is applicable to any backstory, but the reason I say it's especially beneficial to the criminal is because they start with it. The throwing pilly, that's the trick. You may have heard me mention in other videos how useful these things can be, so now I'm going to go into some detail. So first of all, if you take a quick look at the stats, you notice some interesting things. It only costs 123 gold, so buying one of these hardly sets you back at all. It also does 38 damage, which is one of the highest values in the game, and it does bonus damage against shields. Now you'll also notice that it only has 3 durability. So there are really 2 ways to make the most out of this weapon. The first is something that I didn't even think of. This comes from Danos, so big ups to him. And that's just to hold on to one of these and use it during insurance fights. If you aren't sure, your weapon can't take any damage during insurance. It'll always come out with the same durability that it had before the fight, so that basically gives you a dirt cheap 38 damage spear with the throwing pilly. The other way you can use it is to just pick it up during fights because they're almost always on the ground at all levels and you can use them to get some big hits in. Even without insurance, if you hit someone 3 or 4 times and they're fleshed with this, it won't break and they'll most likely be dead. That makes it super useful early on, and even later on it can still be used against enemies that have unarmored spots or if you've broken their armor. So always be on the lookout for these weapons in the shop or the arena because they're so useful. Alright, before getting to the last tip, there's just a little one that a lot of you might already know, but I have a lot of hours on this game and just realized this, so if you're like me, you might need to hear this. You can bet multiple times on the same fight. I don't know why, but I never tried placing more than one bet. I just kinda assumed you couldn't for some reason. But you can, and bets have always been a great way to increase your payouts, so this will just make that even better. Okay, so the last tip, I think we've all probably experienced this where you take a hit and your body kind of ragdolls a little bit and everything kind of gets out of whack. Then you go to swing your weapon and you're not holding it properly or the angle's all wrong. When this happens, I like to just click my block a few times because that seems to return you to the right stance pretty quickly and without using any stamina. And that's that, so I hope these tips are helpful to you guys. Thanks for watching the video, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you next time.